I'm going to have a quick look, dive down and just see if there's anything wrapped around the prop.
And it is a bit of a cock-up because it's taking ages to get past.
Behind me is the Sumatra. It does look pretty nasty. I have never seen so many ships at anchor. So we've got all these boats here and they are anchored up outside Palabuan Sangay, which is obviously a port, and most of them appear on the AIS, but this guy doesn't. It confused me for a little bit, but surprising to see that he isn't on AIS. I'd said in a previous video that we can't repeat the AIS data on our chart plotter up in the cockpit. It has something to do with NEMA 2000 versus NEMA 183. But I won't go into details there. But what I do have, which I forgot to mention, and I don't think you can see this. No, it's an app which allows us to replicate exactly what the chart plotter is seeing down below. It's read only. You can't really do anything with it. But I'll just quickly show you the chart plotter down below because I love the radar display with the AIS on top. The progress is pretty slow here. We are only doing about 4.2 knots maximum, and the tide has turned, so you would have thought that if the tide was against us it should now be with us, but the speed just hasn't changed. There's a few currents around here, but for some reason we're just not getting much speed, and we're doing a good 1700 RPM, so we should be doing about 6 knots. So I'm going to have a quick look, dive down and just see if there's anything wrapped around the prop. It shouldn't take too long. No, not really. I mean, the rudder's, there's nothing wrapped around the prop. There's a few barnacles because I probably cleaned it about, it's probably almost a month ago now since I last cleaned it, but it's not that bad. It's obviously just current. There's already a little fish underneath the rudder hanging out there. Lots and lots of little particles in the water though. It's very murky. Yeah, well, there we go. It's obviously just adverse current.
Give the rudder a scrape then, do you think?
Well, now I'm wet and now we're just bobbing around. I figured I'll give the rudder a quick scrape. Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Well, a few barnacles on the prop, but there are actually quite a lot of barnacles around the waterline. Because of the extra weight we now carry on the back end of Esper, she sort of sits a little bit lower, and so our waterline is quite often above the bootstrap line, which means that barnacles grow very quickly, and we do have a little kind of sort of strip of barnacles there, which obviously doesn't help. Some of you may wonder why I didn't go in with a rope. I think some people might suggest, well, why didn't you use a rope? Well, as you can see, the sea is pretty benign. There's not much happening in the sea. It's not choppy. There's quite a strong current, but I'm a strong swimmer, so that's not really a problem. And for doing something as quickly as that, sometimes the rope actually just gets in the way. So I was pretty confident that rope wasn't required for that little exercise. A little nighttime atmospheric update. Dare I say it, the sea state is completely flat. A little bit of bouncing, but not much. So let's just hope it stays like that. We now have the tide with us, so we have increased our speed. It seemed as if when I dove in the water earlier, it was we were in between two tide stations, and on one tide station the the tide was rising, and on the other it was still falling. So I think our chart plotter was hooked onto the previous tide station. That's the only explanation I can think of. Anyway, there's not too much traffic now, but we are seeing a couple of islands over there with some very strange lights that are suspended, and we do know that between the island and shore you can't go around the back, and I think that's what those suspended lights are, which are flashing. Meanwhile, we've got a light that's supposed to be on an island and one in front of it on a buoy. We're just trying to work out the flashing configuration because it's not really making sense, but apart from that it's all good. We can see the shipping lane closely just over our starboard side there. Behind me are two very, very large big ships. They are so big that one of them was blocking the other AIS transmission, so we couldn't actually see the second one. Very confusing because they're actually at anchor, so very difficult to work out. On the radar we could see two objects, but it wasn't until we got a bit closer that we worked out what they're doing. Behind them is a sandbank and a wreck, so there's a westerly cardinal telling everyone to stay west of them. So we're now sort of edging closer to the shipping lane just to cut in between these ships and the shipping lane itself. 2:30 in the morning, still pretty calm. The tide's just about to turn, so we'll probably lose speed again. We've been hitting up to 7 knots, so that just shows you the difference in the tide in these parts. And according to the weather radar, we've got a huge Sumatra coming across. I think it's coming across from the west, as they tend to do, and we can see the light has been, the sky has been lighting up with lightning all night. Behind me is the Sumatra, another name for storm. Sumatras come in very, very quickly. Often they come in from the west. This one appears to be coming from the northwest, so it's going to cross our path. I've been watching on the radar. It's moving very fast, and there's a lot of lightning, and a lot of it is hitting the sea as well. So at this point we put away electronic gear and put half of it in the oven, the old Faraday effect, to try and protect it if we get struck by lightning and our electrics go down. Then at least we'll have something as backup, hopefully. Anyway, let's hope it doesn't come to that, but it does look pretty nasty, and I really don't like these kinds of storms. And so here it is, dawn. I think this is most cruisers' favourite time of the passage, just because as soon as that sun comes up, or as soon as it gets light, you're just filled with a boost of energy. Always nice to see that. Of course, it does reveal the sea state, which is not so good. Not too bad, just been a bit lumpy. I think I got a bit excited last night by calling that squall Sumatra. It wasn't a Sumatra at all. In fact, the wind didn't pick up too much. What was disconcerting though was the amount of lightning all the way around, and of course we could see it on the radar, and it enveloped us and it disappeared on the radar, which is interesting, but that was pretty much because you're in the center, so the radar's not actually picking up anything. So yeah, don't like, well, love and hate lightning storms in equal measures, to be honest. Liz is asleep and Millie is now patrolling, and I don't like it when she patrols, especially when the sea is a little bit like this. Biggest concern last night with the tugs. A lot of these tugs are pulling 200-meter tows, and it's only thanks to radar that we can tell what they're doing. I'm now going to put Millie away because it's rolling about. Millie? Come on. Come on. Yeah, good girl. Back you go.
sailing for 23 hours or so now, motor sailing to be honest with you, because there's not much wind and what there is has been on the nose. Anyway, we're coming closer now to Singapore. We reckon about another 4 or 5 hours at this rate. Behind Jamie there is an island called Pulau Cock-up, and it is a bit of a cock-up because it's taking ages to get past. It's actually Cuck-up. Yeah, and over my shoulder of course is the shipping lane. You can see the ships are a lot closer than they were further along earlier on. That's because there's quite a narrow channel between the island here and the shipping lanes. As we go around the headland, the shipping lanes start splitting off and going in different directions, and we're going to go on the inside of one that's going to cut right across us in order to get into a little anchorage on the coast of Malaysia called Johor.
I have to say, I have never seen so many ships at anchor. There are so many here that on the radar they're just appearing as one massive red blob, which confused me because I knew they're reclaiming some land and thought perhaps there was a wall there that I couldn't see. But I realised they're all anchored up right by the beginning of the marker point where we turned port up just around the corner there. Very confusing, but boy, I mean, I wouldn't even begin to guess how many boats there are at anchor here, but it's phenomenal. I suppose one good thing is that they're not moving. So they're just outside the shipping lane. Be interesting to see what happens when we get into that shipping lane when we have an equal amount of moving boats. Anyway, better get back to it and see if we can get ourselves in safely.